1947, two horses pulled a covered wagon over the wide open prairie. We were traveling west. My mom and pa were sitting up front with my baby sister Carrie. I was with my older sister Mary in the crowded wagon, smiling out at the green prairie stretching to the skyline. We were part of a huge wave of pioneers pouring into the untamed west. To me, it was an adventure to think about the happy times we'd have searching for our new home. But I also knew we'd have some hardships. My name is Laura Ingalls Wilder. I was born a pioneer on February 7th, 1867 in a log cabin that my pa built in Pittman, Wisconsin. I became a famous writer by writing many best-selling children's books about my life as a pioneer. As a child, I lived with my ma, pa, my older sister Mary, and my two younger sisters Carrie and Grace. But who could forget my good old bulldog Jack? We moved a lot when I was a child, but wherever we were, life was similar for pioneers. We worked hard to survive. We lived in a handmade cabin and sometimes dugouts. My pa made his own bullets and trapped animals for fur and food. Ma cooked all our food on a wood stove and sewed our clothes and grew all of our vegetables. And we made almost all of our belongings. I had many chores. We had to walk the cattle to pasture. I helped Ma sew. I helped her garden, and I watched over my little sisters. I went to school in Walnut Grove. It was a one-room schoolhouse with one teacher for all grades. It was 2.5 miles from home. I was shy at first, but I loved books, and soon I was leading the girls in games at recess. The only problem was there was Nellie Owens, not Olson as I said in my books, and she made fun of us for being farm girls. And Ma said that I couldn't have snowball fights with the boys at school, so I just did it after school. I loved being a pioneer girl and living on the prairie, but sometimes it was hard. There was winter blizzards, and the worst one happened in Daysmet, Minnesota. 6 months of freezing snow. It was 40 below, and there was a dwindling food supply. One day, 2 young men went to a homestead to get wheat. What they brought back saved the town. One of the young heroes was named Alonzo Wilder, my future husband. Summer drought and paw crops failed. There was a grasshopper cloud, and it was 275 miles wide. It ate clothes off people's back and wool from live sheep. And then there was the danger of wild animals. Once there was a pack of wolves surrounding my house, howling at the moon. And lastly, there was illness without medicine. One terrible day, a tragedy brought my sister Mary and I closer together than we had ever been before. Mary came down with a headache and a high fever. She grew weaker and sicker. Everyone feared she would die. Slowly she got better, but it left Mary blind. Mary needed to go to a special school for the blind, so I became a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse. The money I earned helped Mary go to school. It was hard because some kids were older than I was and didn't listen. I lived with the families whose rundown shack was next to the school. It was cold, they were rude, and they fought bitterly. 8 weeks later, I returned home to go back to school as a student. Alonzo Wilder came to pick me up. Alonzo grew up on a farm in New York. He wanted to become a homesteader in Dakota Territory. You could get 160 acres for free if you built a house, dug a well, cleared the land, and planted a crop within 5 years. Within 3 years, Alonzo proved up his land and won my love. We married on August 25th, 1885. I was 18 years old and Alonzo was 28. We lived in a house that Alonzo built. Being a grown-up woman was hard. I needed strength and courage. We owned 320 acres. Fire destroyed our new home, and hail and drought ruined our crops. Illness left Alonzo with a limp for the rest of his life. But on December 5th, 1886, Rose was born, my daughter. 3 years later, my baby boy died before he was named. 1894, I moved with Alonzo and Rose to Mansfield, Missouri. We bought a 40-acre farm, and I named it Rocky Ridge. We lived there for the rest of my life. Rose was a brilliant girl and far ahead of her classmates. She didn't like farm life or small towns. She wanted a different life. When she was 16, Alonzo's sister Elsa came to visit for a visit. She invited Rose to come live with her and go to high school. By 1930, Rose was a writer for newspaper and magazines. She traveled to far places, France, Turkey, Albania, and Iraq, and Egypt. She lived in both the West and East Coast. Some stories were fiction based on my life as a child. By this time, Ma and Pa and Mary had died, and the frontier was long gone, but still bright and alive in my imagination. I wrote an autobiography, but no one wanted to publish it because they already had books about that topic for grown-ups. So I started over writing for middle-aged children, remembering how books were so important to me at that age. My first book was written in third person rather than autobiography about my life as a little girl in the big woods. It was hard to publish during the Great Depression. Many people didn't have enough food for clothes or money, let alone books. Editors told me to rewrite and put some meat on my stories. Finally, another editor from Harper & Brothers read my story on a train ride, and Mr. Stop. She knew the book was good. It held her attention. Then it was published, Little House in the Big Woods. I thought this would be my first and last, but children demanded more because they loved it so much. So I wrote Farmer Boy, a story about Almanzo's childhood. I continued to write more and more. The more I wrote, the more I remembered. I only wanted to write about the happy times. 8 little children's books, Child to Marriage. In 1943, my last book, These Happy Golden Years, I was 76 years old. My final years were spent enjoying on my farm, making butter, sitting by the fire, reading and working in the garden. I died on February 10th, 1957, 3 days after my 90th birthday. After death, 3 more books were written by Rose and the editor using my diary on the way home, a packet of letters from Almanzo, west from home. Then the readers asked what happened next, so lastly the first 4 years was published. I am remembered for my 8 wonderful children's books. I always wanted people to remember me by the kindness of my heart. The real things haven't changed. They can never change. It is still best to be honest and truthful, to make the most of what we have, to be happy with simple pleasures, and to be cheerful and have courage when things go wrong.